Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today we're going to take a look at the Ayaneo Pocket Air, which came out 6 months ago, but it has an OLED screen. You might be wondering why. Why are we looking at a device that is 6 months old now? And, well, a few different reasons, but the first and biggest one was I just got it used off of the marketplace. So I was able to snag a pretty good deal on it, and it made me interested in this device and interested enough to make a video on, because there's no other way to put this, but I actually kind of love this handheld. It is actually a really good handheld. And all of it is tied to the amount of money I paid, because at launch, if I would have paid what they wanted, I wouldn't have had this same sort of reaction to it. But because of where it is in the market now, the price that you can get it for used and all of that sort of thing, it suddenly becomes a very attractive option. And I don't think it's just for me. It's not perfect. The buttons are tiny. The software isn't great. And it's still using switch sticks at the price point that it's at. But as a whole, with the OLED screen, the Dimensity 1200 processor, and all of that sort of thing, it is a very good handheld, especially for what you can get it for nowadays. I didn't have liking an Ayaneo product on my 2024 bingo card, but here we are. By the way, today's video sponsor is PCBWay. Have you been finding a lot of cool 3D prints online and wishing that you had a 3D printer to print them all? But then you go and see the price of one of those and you're like, nope, I'm back to wishing. PCBWay allows you to upload those designs and files. They'll print them for you, and then they're going to ship them to you. Easy peasy, save yourself a ton of money, and get those awesome 3D prints. Even cooler, they're now offering UV printing, which lets you print high-quality images on a bunch of different materials. Check them out, link down below. So anyways, coming back to the reason for the video, there are a lot of handhelds out there. There are a lot of handhelds. And they come and go, just like the Pocket Air. They release to, in this scenario, little fanfare. Nobody really cared about it. 2 weeks later, we all move on to something else, or back to the handhelds that actually are prominent or popular. And so they don't get a fair shake at release, at least because of a lot of different reasons, either buggy software, hardware, or in this scenario, just buggy software, but also pricing just didn't make sense. But if you wait a few months, you suddenly get it at a price that maybe it should have launched at, or maybe it's now actually good at. And we've seen this in so many different devices. The MSI Claw in 3 to 6 months might actually be a good purchase. The TrimUI Smart Pro at launch, it was completely panned by everybody, except for me. But look at it now at a $50 price point, and suddenly everybody wants one on their Christmas list. Look at the Logitech G Cloud. The G Cloud right now is still $299 brand new, but you can get it for $150 to $180 on the marketplace. At that price, used, it is better than a lot of other handhelds, and suddenly it makes more sense. Suddenly you see the value of the G Cloud because it's an awesome handheld at that price. Tying it all back, that is how we come to the Ayaneo Pocket Air being in my hands and in a video, because it is a perfect example of a device where at release, the price did not make sense, the software was not there, and months later, suddenly the software is better. I'm not going to say it's good or perfect, but it's there, and pricing suddenly makes sense because I was able to pick this up at $215. Now, for those that don't know, the Ayaneo Pocket Air released at $299 for the 6GB model that I have here. There was a $279 early bird pricing. So that was the kind of early launch date pricing that you could get it at. But obviously that doesn't include shipping and all of that sort of thing. And if you're Canadian, Ayaneo uses DHL. So add a whole bunch of money on top of those numbers. And suddenly you're seeing why it just didn't make sense. And there's other reasons too. Now, they started selling it in September of 2023. And if you happen to remember to that time, there was another device that was just announced and was coming out. And it was the AYN Odin 2. A lot of people, as soon as they found out about the AYN Odin 2, suddenly this just didn't make sense anymore because The early bird pricing for the Odin 2 was $242 US. The cheapest that you get the Air for was $279. At that point, obviously it didn't make sense. The only thing that the Ayaneo Pocket Air has over the Odin 2 is the OLED screen. And to pay more and have only that benefit, it just didn't make sense for general public, for everybody. And so this had a 2-week lifespan, basically, where it lived and died, and now we're here months later. Now, in a world where the Odin 2 didn't exist, this likely would have taken off, but we don't live in that world. But there was other negatives to the Pocket Air too. Obviously, Ayaneo is a big one. There isn't a lot of faith in them as a company from the general community. As well, when you consider the fact that it was a limited run. So they only made a certain number of devices of these. And whether that was in response to the Odin 2 or if that was always the plan, I don't know. But when it becomes a limited item and there's another already better handheld that isn't limited and all that sort of thing, and you know that they're going to support it with software and all of that, because this, like every other Ayaneo product, got support for a few months in software and then they forgot about it, as usual. Whereas the Odin 2 is still getting updates. Even if they break things, they're fixing other things. So we're still getting updates. Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, still getting updates. This, no more updates. So you can start to see why people gravitate towards other options. They apparently still have these for sale on their Shopify website. I think at this point they should probably just clear them out. So the Odin 2 took the first blow, and it was the biggest blow, but the actual nail in the coffin, the final nail in the coffin, was the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro releasing $100 less for a chip that was very similar, and just a few months later. So it's kind of a case of the Odin 2 really taking a big chunk, and then the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro finishing it off. But honestly, by the time the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro was announced and released, this was already kind of long gone. So it wasn't really a consideration. It was really more the Odin 2 that took it out. But, that was a lot of negatives about the Ayaneo Pocket Air, and I get it. However, there are a lot of good things with this device. A lot of things that I am really liking in comparison to the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, in comparison to the Anbernic RG556, and even the Odin 2. So there's a lot going for it. There's a 5.5-inch OLED 1080p screen, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful screen. I've compared it to the RG556. There's a little bit better saturation on this panel. It is actually a better quality panel as well, but in reality, looking at them side by side, can't really tell much of a difference, although you can tell that the Pocket Air is a little bit better. This has a Dimensity 1200 processor, which is better than the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro's Dimensity 1100 processor. Not a big difference, but still a difference. Then you add in the fact that it has a 7,350 milliamp hour battery, whereas the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. Then we have Hall sticks, Hall triggers, there's Wi-Fi 6 in here. So you can start to see that hardware-wise, it's got everything that you would want and need. So again, it goes back to the issue of the price that they sold it at in comparison to the other devices out there, which was coming out, Odin 2. It just didn't make sense. But nowadays at $215 US, which is what I bought it for, and let's just say if you can get it for $215 to $240, I'd say in that range, that, in my mind, beats a lot of the competition, especially the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. Unless you really want that portability, which this isn't terrible, it's not that big, but also at the same price. So I got this $215, the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro shipped is $215. I would take this 10 out of 10. And this isn't a dig against the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. That is a great handheld as well. It's just this has so much more in it at that same price point that it starts to be an interesting conversation when it wasn't in the conversation at all previously. I think the surprising thing here is this is a nice combination of the Anbernic RG556 and the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. It is basically a blend of both of them in a very nice way. And I'm actually surprised that I'm saying that about an Ayaneo product, but once again, it just has to do with the price. When you remove the price or you lower the price to where it suddenly makes sense, you can start to see where this would fit in. Now, in comparison to the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, well, let's do an actual comparison here. The Ayaneo Pocket Air that I have here is the 6GB model. The Retroid has 8GB, so Retroid comes out ahead in that space, although there are other options for more RAM if you get those models, but I'm just going to go by what I have here. Now, the Pocket Air has a better processor. The Pocket Air has the 5.5-inch OLED screen at 1080p, which, again, better than the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. 50% better battery, and in my mind already, the OLED screen and the battery are two of the Retroid's biggest weaknesses that are covered by the Ayaneo Pocket Air, and that's interesting. But the 4 Pro has Android 13, which could be a con to a lot of people. I don't consider it a con. As well, they have the actual non-switch sticks, the better sticks, where the Pocket Air is still using switch sticks. But other than that, the Ayaneo Pocket Air is kind of better. And so we come to the other comparison, and the other one is the RG556. Now, a lot of people have done comparisons between the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro and the Anbernic RG556 for performance. And obviously we know that the 4 Pro has a lot better performance than the 556 does. And so you can only imagine that this goes a step further because it has a better processor than the 4 Pro. So once we take that out of consideration, the power of this is going to be better than the 556. What are we left with? Well, there's the screen, and to the naked eye, you could look at both of them and say they're about the same. In my eyes, the Air has a little bit better of a screen, but I mean, this is a rounding error. You wouldn't normally notice a difference. Both are fantastic screens, so let's cut that one out. We come to the other things that matter. The battery is bigger. The sticks are better. And the Wi-Fi speed on this is 3 times better than the one on the 556. It was absolutely crazy because I did my in-depth testing in my review. A lot of people saw that for the 556. It's a bad Wi-Fi chip or antenna or something. This completely demolishes it. It is 3 times faster in the same spots that the 556 is in. So if you care about streaming, which I do, and I've been using this for streaming, it is absolutely fantastic for it. So I love it for that. And so you can start to see, if we come full circle here, the Ayaneo Pocket Air versus the 556 versus the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, if this is at $215 US, which is what I bought it at, and I think a lot of people could get it used at that price, this becomes a lot better of a purchase than those two in my mind. And I'm not going to say that those two are bad. They aren't. These are 3 fantastic handhelds. It just becomes interesting because this is a higher spec handheld that is now in that pricing conversation. For whatever reason, it's funny to see how often Ayaneo misses layups like this, easy layups, because if they would have just released this at a proper price point, instead of doing their normal Ayaneo pricing on every single thing that they do, because that is the one major criticism for every Ayaneo product that anybody's ever bought. The pricing does not make sense in comparison to other devices. Perfect example, right here, have it right here. They intentionally go after the wrong markets and wrong pricing tiers. And then when they get the pricing right, or they get a pricing tier that makes sense, so like the Ayaneo Mini PC, the AM01 that I reviewed, or like the Ayaneo Next Lite, the pricing is low, but the device is even worse. So it's not a scenario where you should be praising them for, hey, this is a $299 device. Yeah, it's $299, but the actual device is worth $100. This isn't that scenario. I'm not sure. Instead of them focusing on mini PCs that are frankly garbage, or the Ayaneo Next Lite, which is basically e-waste, just focus on quality products like this and make the pricing make sense. Because then you suddenly become part of the conversation for these devices. Otherwise, people just look at Ayaneo as a name and say, no, I'm good. And that's where I was at until I got this, and I'm still going to be like that for other products. But if they could do something like this, another device like this, in a price point that makes sense, with the specs that make sense, they could become a name in this conversation. Now, it's not all sunshine and roses. This is not a perfect device by any stretch of the imagination. The software is not great. The Ayaneo included software is pretty intrusive. I've kind of gotten it to the way that I want it now by removing most of it and getting rid of it and all that sort of thing. But it is still intrusive. It is still here in a way. It tries to make it a Windows handheld, but it's not. It is Android, and I would rather them just not do any of that. Plus, I already mentioned the tiny buttons, the switch sticks. It gets a little warm and hot quite a bit, depending on the mode that you're using. And if you use the fan, then you have fan noise to deal with. So they're just potential cons, but these are all little minor nitpicks in my opinion. Now, comfort-wise, it is night and day more comfortable than the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, but it is not as comfortable as the Anbernic RG556, which again, that's my top spot for comfort. This is kind of a one step down, so I would put it in line with the Odin 2, which in my mind are very comfortable devices, but not as comfortable as the 556. Then we have the colors, and this color, this smoker's white color and red and all of that, this is the only option you have available to you. So unless you really like this color scheme, that is a big knock against it, because you look at the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro and you have all the colors of the rainbow. You look at the 556 and at least they have black for the boring people. They have blue, that looks amazing. So you start to see why you really need to like this color combination, otherwise it's just not a device for you. But anyways, let's wrap it all up. I think if you could find this for $215 to $240 US shipped, I would probably grab this instead of both the 556 and the 4 Pro. And that's just my opinion. Having owned all three, having the 556 and using it quite a bit, and now owning this is just a fantastic device at that price point. The OLED screen, the bigger battery, the processing power, all of it combined into a really good handheld. So good luck in your search. That's going to be it for this one. Let me know in the comments what you think about this video idea, because there are probably a lot more devices like this. Scenarios where a device came and went, or it released at a high price point, had bad software, all that sort of thing. And if I pick it up used later after the fact, and suddenly it makes sense in comparison to a lot of the newer devices coming out, because let's face it, Anbernic has kind of run out of ideas. We have the 2024 RG556 that is worse than devices that came out 2 years prior. So it could be an interesting thing to look at previous devices that probably are better than what's new nowadays. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow, and hope you all have a good one.